Hello dear learners, welcome to the class. Topic for today's lecture is welfare state, an important concept in the modern political spectrum which determines the nature and functions of the state. We shall be discussing this topic under the following headings: Introduction, Meaning, Origin, Features, Concept of welfare in Indian political process, Key features of Indian welfare state, various welfare policies, challenges to Indian welfare state, future prospects, significance, conclusion. Introduction. The existence of some form of welfare is now accepted across most of the political spectrum. One of the defining characteristics of the modern state is seen in the responsibility it takes for the welfare of its citizens. The state regulates social and economic relations to ensure the well-being of its people. Every state today would like to call itself a welfare state. Previously, our conception of a state was that of a police state whose primary function was to provide law and order. It was left to the individuals to do what they considered to be for their welfare. Professor Harold J. Lasky, English political theorist and economist, did a lot to bring about a change in the thinking of the people with regard to the functions of the state. He emphasized the fact that it was the duty of the state to do all those things which were considered necessary for the welfare of the people. So students, we see that in the modern political spectrum, the concept of welfare state occupies an important position. It is seen in the responsibility of welfare it takes for the well-being of its citizens. Modern state is a welfare state. Traditional state was a police state whose main duty was only to maintain the law and order in the society. And it was the political theorist and economist, political scientist, Professor Harold J. Lasky, who propagated and worked for the concept of the welfare state, the welfare activities which state should undertake for its citizens. Now, meaning. The term welfare state describes collectively a range of social policies that aim to provide basic services such as health and education according to the need and normally free of charge through state funding. It is sometimes extended more loosely to the areas such as social security, in which individuals are largely required to make substantial contributions in order to receive the benefits. The theory of welfare state is the basis of positive liberalist. It is a sort of a state which provides extensive social services to all the citizens, protects the weaker sections, provides economic and social security, and tries to reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. It makes laws to control the economy, nationalizes industries, makes laws to protect the weaker sections, arranges the supply of essential commodities, maintains essential services, and through progressive taxation and income redistribution tries to reduce the gap between the rich and the poor and thereby harmonizes the different interests in society. So students, we see that the meaning of the term welfare state is, it is a sort of a concept of government in which the state plays a key role in the protection and promotion of the interest of its citizens. That is, it looks after the social well-being of its citizens. A welfare state is based on the principle of equality, equity, equality of opportunities, equitable distribution of resources and wealth. It focuses on the governmental responsibility for those who are unable to avail for themselves, that is, the minimal requirement provisions for a good life. Under this system of welfare state, the welfare of its citizens is the responsibility of the government. Now, origin. The concept of the welfare state was born towards the close of the 19th century and has become popular in this century, especially after World War II. The term welfare state first emerged in the UK during World War II. It came as a reaction against both the 19th century individualism and the 20th century collectivism. According to the individualistic theory, the sole duty of the government was to protect the individual from violence and fraud. The positive interference of the state with the individual, even in his own interest, was not justified. Nor was the state justified in undertaking operations of an economic character or in imposing restrictions other than prevention of violence or fraud on the economic activities of its citizens. Students, this concept of the welfare state is of British origin. It took roots around the period of the Second World War, when the British government was faced with the 5 giant problems, that is want, disease, ignorance, squalor, idleness. A various series of measures were passed by the government which resulted in the nationalization of the industries like railways, coal mines, steel industry, banks. Bank of England was nationalized, transportation was nationalized. Various provisions were also made for social insurance schemes, old age pensions, old age benefits, widow benefits, some unemployment benefits, some benefits for the school children, like providing milk for the school children, free medical services, free secondary education and other liberal measures were introduced by the government during this period. And this concept of the welfare functions provided by the state gradually spread to the other parts of the world also. Now, features. The welfare state is a political economic setup with the following characteristics. A welfare state is neither a police state nor a socialist state. It functions within the framework of democratic political institutions in order to bring about the material welfare of the people. It is a synthesis of liberalism and socialism. It allows private property and regulates it in the general interests. It believes in the principle of mixed economy. It upholds the rights of all without showing discrimination against any individual or group of people. It regulates the economic and other activities of the people in larger interests of the society and does not allow a particular class to exploit the other classes. It undertakes the responsibility of bringing about the material welfare of the people. It establishes social welfare state through democratic socialization. It regulates the production according to the needs of the society by implementing economic planning. Students, there are certain basic characteristics of the concept of welfare state. The welfare state is not merely contented with the collection of the taxes and maintenance of law and order. It also promotes the interests of the society. It undertakes the responsibility of bringing about material well-being of the people within the framework of the democratic political institutions. The welfare state should take initiatives to protect and promote the health of the people, economic security and their well-being. It should adopt measures to abolish illiteracy, poverty, unemployment. It should establish schools, hospitals and other institutions to meet the requirements of the people. It should provide unemployment relief, old age pensions, maternity benefits and other social benefits to its people. It should uphold the rights of all without any discrimination, any sort of discrimination between individuals or groups. It should respect human dignity, human personality and give justice to all the people. It should help the poor by providing adequate assistance in the times of need. It should regulate economic and other activities of the people in the larger interest of the society. It should not allow any particular class, group or section to exploit the other classes or groups. The welfare state is against the policy of maintaining a free economy, that is, it regulates the market and economy. Now, the concept of welfare in Indian political process. India was not a welfare state before independence. The British rule was not very interested in protecting and promoting the welfare of the people. Whatever it did was in keeping with the interest of the British colonial government and not in the interest of the people of India. When India attained independence, it had innumerable problems and challenges. The social and economic inequality was all pervasive. Economically, India's situation was miserable. Socially also, India was having a number of problems. There was social inequalities and all the vulnerable sections of the society, such as women, Dalits, children, were deprived of basic means of living. The constitution makers were very much aware of the problems. That is why they decided that India should be a welfare state. As you must have seen, India is described as a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic in the preamble of the constitution. Accordingly, the constitution has extensive provisions to ensure social and economic welfare of the people of India. So, students, we see that in the pre-independence era, India was not a welfare state. Prior to independence, welfare activities were limited and often influenced by the policies of the British Empire, that is colonial policies. And in the post-independence era, that is after attaining the independence, India's welfare states concept evolved significantly with a focus on social equality, equity and development of the nation. Next, the constitutional landmarks and key legislations provided by the Indian Constitution, such as directive principles of the state policy, fundamental rights and the preamble to the Indian Constitution, which provides the philosophy of the welfare state of India. Now, key features of Indian welfare state. Social security schemes. India's welfare state encompasses various social security programs aimed at providing financial support to vulnerable groups, educational and healthcare rights, guaranteeing access to education and healthcare services for all citizens, emphasizing inclusive development, rural development initiatives, specialized programs targeting rural upliftment, promoting agricultural growth and livelihood improvement, universal healthcare, educational initiatives and public distribution system. So, these are the key features of the Indian welfare state, providing social security schemes, educational and healthcare schemes and rights to the people, and providing the rural development, that is agricultural development, development of the rural population, and lastly public distribution scheme, that is PDS, which is one of the key feature of India's welfare state, that is PDS, which provides essential commodities to the marginalized population at the subsidized rates by the government. Students, this concept of the welfare state exercised a tremendous influence on the makers of the Indian Constitution, and the Constitution makers had provided extensive provisions in the Constitution to ensure the social and economic welfare of the people of India in the form of the fundamental rights and directive principles of the state policy. The fundamental rights act as a guarantee that all Indian citizens can and will enjoy civil liberties and basic rights. These civil liberties take precedence over any other law of the land. Part 3 of the Constitution, which contains the fundamental rights, is rightly described as the Magna Carta of India, as they are guaranteed by the Constitution to all persons without any discrimination. They uphold the equality of all individuals, the dignity of the individual, and the larger public interest and unity of the nation. They are meant for promoting the ideal of political democracy. They prevent the establishment of an authoritarian and despotic rule in the country and protect the liberties and freedom of the people. Against the invasion by the state, they operate as limitations on the tyranny of the executive and arbitrariness of the legislature. In short, they aim at establishing a government of laws and not of men. The fundamental rights are named so because they are guaranteed and protected by the Constitution, which is the fundamental law of the land. They are fundamental also in the sense that they are most essential for the all-round development, material and intellectual, moral and spiritual of the individuals. Students, this chapter of fundamental rights, which is contained in the part 3 of the Constitution, it provides a lot of rights to the citizens of India. Originally, the Constitution provided for 7 fundamental rights, but the right to property was deleted from the chapter on fundamental right by the 44th Amendment Act in 1978, and now there are only 6 fundamental rights provided by the Constitution, namely right to equality contained in Article 14 to 18, right to freedom contained in Article 19 to 22, right against exploitation Articles 23, 24, right to freedom of religion Article 25, 28, cultural and educational rights, that is Article 29, 30, right to constitutional remedies Article 32. So these are the 6 fundamental rights provided by the Constitution to Indian citizens. Again, students, we see that the Supreme Court of India, which also acts as the guardian of the Constitution, through its various judgments from time to time, and especially in one of its judgments, that is Menka Gandhi versus the Union of India in 1978, has reaffirmed and has given a wider interpretation to the various articles, especially the Article 21. It has declared various rights as a part of the Article 21, that is right to live with human dignity, right to livelihood, right to shelter, right to health, right to free education up to the age of 14 years, right to free legal aid, right to decent standard of environment including pollution free water, air, protection against hazardous industries, right against inhuman treatment, right against bonded labor, right to social economic justice, empowerment, right to opportunity, right to sustainable development. So we see that the government from time to time, in keeping in view with these rights provided by the fundamental rights, launches various schemes, various policies. For example, free legal aid is provided by the NALSA, that is National Legal Service Authority. Then Right to Persons with Disabilities Act have also been passed by the government in 2016. So we see that the government from time to time, central government as well as state governments, provide various schemes which are funded for the welfare of the citizens of country. Now, the chapter on the directive principles of state policy is nothing but a reflection of the ideals of welfare state. The directive principles of state policy are enumerated in part 4 of the Constitution from Articles 36 to 51. The framers of the Constitution borrowed this idea from the Irish Constitution of 1937. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar describes these principles as novel features of the Indian Constitution. Directive principles along with the fundamental rights contain the philosophy of the Constitution and is the soul of the Constitution. These have been rightly described by Granville Austin as the conscience of the Constitution. Phrase directive principles of state policy denotes the ideals that the state should keep in mind while formulating policies and enacting laws. These are constitutional instructions or recommendations to the state in legislative, executive and administrative matters. Students, the directive principles of state policy DPSP constitute a very comprehensive social, economic and political program for a modern democratic state. They aim at realizing the high ideals of equality, liberty, justice, fraternity as outlined in the preamble to the Constitution. They embody the concept of a welfare state and not that of a police state which existed during the British colonial era. In brief, we can say that they seek to establish economic and social democracy in the country. The directive principles are non-justiciable in nature, but they help the courts in examining and determining the constitutional validity of the law. Now students, these directive principles are broadly classified into three categories: socialist principles, Gandhian principles and liberal intellectual principles. Socialist principles reflect the idealism or ideology of socialism. They lay down a framework for democratic socialist state which aim at providing social economic justice to all its citizens and set towards the path of the welfare state. They direct the state to promote the welfare of the people by securing social order permeated by justice, social, economic, political, and to minimize the inequalities in the income and status facilities or opportunities. Now various directive principles like secure the right to adequate means of livelihood for all the citizens, the equitable distribution of material resources of the community for the common good, the prevention of concentration of wealth and means of production, equal pay for equal work for men and women, preservation of health and strength of workers and children against forcible abuse, opportunities for healthy development of children, to promote equal justice and to provide free legal aid to the poor, secure the right to work, to education and to public assistance in case of unemployment, old age, sickness and disablement, make provisions for just in humane conditions for work and maternity relief, secure a living wage, a decent standard of life and social and cultural opportunities for all workers, to raise the level of nutrition and the standard of living of the people and to improve public health, to promote the educational and economic interests of the SC, ST and other weaker sections of the society, protect them from social injustice and exploitation, to provide early childhood care and education for all the children until they complete the age of 6 years, to protect and improve the environment. So students, we see that these are the various directive principles enumerated in the Constitution, and the government work and try to provide these basic principles through the various policies and programs launched by the government from time to time. For example, one of the massive program of the central government, that is Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, is being implemented in almost all the states of the country. Again, similarly, right to education provided by the government in 2009, which is also added as a fundamental rights in the chapter 3rd of the Constitution. Then equal pay for equal work has been ensured. Again, the system of Panchayati Raj has been provided the constitutional status by the government through the amendment 73rd and 74th. Next, minimum wages have been fixed in almost all the spheres of employment, equal wages for equal work. So we see that the various schemes, programs to boost the rural employment have been provided by the government from time to time. For example, Manrega, that is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, Swern Jayanti Gram Swarozgar Yojana, these are the two major examples of the welfare schemes being launched by the government. The 86th Constitutional Amendment was adopted to ensure provisions for free and compulsory education for children, and the Right to Education Act was passed in 2009 to make it a fundamental right. Many laws have been passed to protect children from exploitation. A number of welfare schemes have been implemented for the poor and backward classes and also for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Seats have been reserved for them in Parliament and Vidhan Sabhas. Several laws and welfare schemes have been launched to protect women from exploitation. The 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act added directive principle which ensures protection of and improvement of environment, safeguarding forest and wildlife, projects and programs like Save Tiger, Rhino, Elephant, etc. are being implemented in pursuance of the newly added directive principles. Cottage industries have been established and protected, giving tax concessions. So, we see that with these instances of the various programs which have been launched by the government in consonance with the principles, directive principles, though there is no legal backing of the directive principles, as directive principles are non-justiciable in nature, but we can see that the India is committed to the concept of the welfare and development of the people, and government has launched from time to time various schemes for the welfare of its people. The government sets aside a large proportion of the union budget for the launching the various welfare schemes. Now, various welfare schemes: Atal Pension Yojana for senior citizens, Manrega for rural unemployed people, Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana for women below poverty level, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana for the youth, Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana for the rural population, Ayushman Bharat Yojana for general population, Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalay for the girls of scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, OBC, minority communities and other BPL families. Then Antyodaya Anna Yojana for BPL families, Pradhan Mantri Matritva Yojana for the pregnant females, Deen Dayal Disabled Rehabilitation Scheme for the disabled people, Stand Up India for the SC/ST women entrepreneurs, then Sampurna Gramin Rozgar Yojana for the rural population. So, students, we see that these various schemes, welfare schemes, have been launched by the government from time to time for the welfare of the citizens of India. Now, it is clear that the government at central and state levels and at local levels are working for the implementation of the various welfare schemes in consonance with the directive principles of the state policy. A lot of work has been done, but students, we see that still the problems of poverty, unemployment, poor health, illiteracy do exist in the country. The spirit of directive principles to improve the quality of the life of people and the continuous process and efforts of the government is showing some results, but not up to the mark. Now, the various challenges Indian welfare state faces: income inequality, failure of policy implementation, prevalence of discrimination, unemployment levels have steadily risen. Then there are various administrative bottlenecks, that is unsympathetic attitude of bureaucracy, complex bureaucratic procedure, corruption, leakages, instances of corruption, resource allocation, that is allocation of resources and equitable distribution of services remain a major significant challenge faced by the government in the policy implementation or in the implementation of these various welfare schemes. So, we see that India faces many challenges in becoming a welfare state, that is a welfare state model in its true sense. However, it continually strives to move in that direction for the future, which is evident from the various schemes like Ayushman Bharat scheme, Bharatmala project, Sagarmala project, which is being launched by the government. And we can say that despite the challenges, the welfare state continues to play a pivotal role in addressing the social inequalities and promoting inclusive development of India. Efforts to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of welfare programs are essential to ensure socio-economic progress of the country. Now, students, certain future prospects and reforms for Indian welfare states like technological integration, social security enhancement and policy innovation, integration of technology for effective, efficient delivering and monitoring of the welfare schemes, reforms focusing on strengthening social security measures, expanding coverage to the required and vulnerable populations, and exploring innovative policy solutions to address the emerging welfare schemes and enhance program effectiveness is required for the delivering the various welfare schemes. Now, significance of welfare state in Indian political process. First, social equity, then citizen empowerment and nation building. The welfare state stands as a pivotal element in advancing the principle of social equity and inclusiveness in the development in Indian political scene. Then it serves as a mechanism for empowering its citizens and ensuring access to essential services and promoting the common well-being of all its population. Then last is nation building. Through promoting the socio-economic progress and the welfare of the state, it contributes to a broader objective of the nation building and inclusive growth of the country. Conclusion. India is truly a welfare state. Each year, various schemes are introduced to fulfill this aim and provide better living conditions. A large part of budget focuses on to eradicate poverty, bring equality and provide security. Still, when India tries to achieve these goals at the core, poor implementation and heavy corruption interrupts in its way and hence creating hindrances in the path of the success. So students, we can say that though India has launched many programs for the general good, but there are many hindrances also in attaining its concept of the welfare state. The central and state governments have launched many welfare schemes, implemented many welfare schemes, but much more has to be done to realize the goal of welfare state in India. It's just planning without implementation is just like a vehicle without fuel. So much stress has to be given on the implementation of all the welfare schemes, which if we have to achieve the true ideal of a welfare state. So students, in today's lecture, we have discussed about the concept of welfare state and welfare state in Indian political scene. How we have worked for the concept of welfare state, we have worked for achieving the ideal of the welfare state, various policies, various hindrances also, and the ways to remove those hindrances. Thank you.